All right, we're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Fuentes,
Present.
Duval,
Here.
Berryhill, Buchanan, Carter, Fong, Fuller, Furutani, Huffman, Krikorian, Skinner, Smythe, Swanson, Tirico, Valines.
Here. Yeah, I know. Well, this is because I was late, and I deserve this chair to be this size. And apparently somebody that plays basketball at 7 feet was sitting in it earlier.
Very good. Well, we have a quorum established, and I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, very good. We've got a quorum present, and I'd like to thank you, Mr. Valines, and in advance, Mr. Maurer, for being here today to present on AB 33. We've already had a lengthy informational hearing on the substance of much of this bill, and so this hearing should be rather concise. I'd also like to thank you for working so diligently with the committee staff. I understand that we've included some amendments as placeholder language to lay the foundation for discussion, because this bill will need to move rather quickly to meet our legislative deadlines. Please don't assume that these are hostile amendments in any way. I and my staff are committed to working with you to find responsible resolutions to some of the more complicated and outstanding issues like transmission siting. With that, Mr. Valines and Mr. Maurer, if you would present your bill, then we'll try to move along quickly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate it. I apologize for being a little bit late. I actually was in with the Speaker talking about potentially this bill, if it were to get out of committee, going to natural resources and trying to do the timing quick so we can meet this legislative agenda. So thank you. You said a lot of the things I wanted to say actually in your opening remarks. We've worked close with the committee. There have been excellent amendments proposed by staff and other committee members. Really what we're trying to do here, what the governor's trying to do, is simply reorg the energy regulatory environment. I think this bill is a good attempt at streamlining, putting accountability where it should be. And, you know, there's still room to make sure that we do the right thing as we move through the process, albeit it'll be a little bit short. But with the work of the agency and Mr. Maurer and the governor's office and the members here, I think we're in a great spot to move a significant piece of legislation through. And it's clear that this bill is meant to simply reorg, make things streamlined and accountable to the people. I think it's a good idea. So I'm encouraged how it's gone. I really appreciate the staff work that's been put into it, and would simply turn it over to Mr. Maurer.
Move the bill.
Second.
Mr. Chair and members, I'm Chris Maurer. I'm the Deputy Secretary for Legislation over at Natural Resources Agency. I don't want to rehash everything that we went through at the informational hearing. You were all there back in July. I'd be happy to answer any questions folks might have with regards to some of the major provisions of the bill and some of the amendments that were in the August 26 amendments. I want to make a point, and I had mentioned this back at the informational hearing, that we had been looking into the issue with regards to the previous version of the bill, where you had the Energy Secretary and the chair of the Commission having exclusive siting authority. We've removed that. It goes back to the full Commission. You'll notice also that the governor would like to have a change the name of the Energy Commission to the Energy Board. It's the same body. They'll be doing the same deliberative processes. They'll still be handling siting, energy efficiencies, building energy efficiencies. The reason for that, if you like to know, with regards to the confusion that goes on with regards to the Energy Commission. You have the Energy Commission in terms of the five-member body. You have the Energy Commission with regards to the 1,500 staff department that deals with energy-related issues. Governor felt it was appropriate for two reasons. One is we're finishing the first decade of the 21st century. Our state's energy needs and our policies that need to accommodate them need to change. We need to move with the times. The Energy Commission has been in existence since 1974. They've done a good job for the responsibility that's been given to them. The governor would like to see the Department of Energy with an energy secretary and have the energy board. In terms of somebody has a better name nomenclature than just energy board, we're up for it, but the governor preferred board. So I just wanted to respond to you in case anybody had questions with regards to that. Energy siting, the bill still continues with regards to giving the authority to the Department of Energy with regards to large renewable generation siting. That would include all renewable technologies. in addition to what the Energy Commission currently has with regards to large, i.e. 50 megawatts or greater thermal siting. We also, in terms of probably the biggest issue here, and I think probably the most discussion that will go on here, is with regards to transmission. I'd like to mention that I really appreciate the committee's consultant, Gina Adams. She's been great to work with. There were a lot of amendments. We had amendments of our own that we put forth. They were substantive, clarifying, technical, and there were also some amendments that the committee proposed and are now in the bill as amended August 26th. Some of them we like, we're okay with. Some of them, we could probably live with them. And some of them, like the transmission siting issue, the placeholder language, we still have problems with. We think we have a better process. We think we have a better proposal. And both Karen Douglas, the chair of the commission, and Terry O'Brien, who is the deputy director for the commission's division of siting, transmission, and environmental quality, they can provide information as to what we think is better and what works for us. With regards to the other issue that took up a lot of time, the transfer of the energy-related programs from the Department of Community Services and Development, CSD. There were a lot of providers that obviously were there at not only this informational hearing, but the informational hearing that Chairman Padilla had as well over in the Senate a couple of weeks prior to your hearing. The amendments of the bill will still transfer the energy-related programs, LIHEAP, Weatherization Assistance Program, over to the Department of Energy, albeit there's a 3-year delay in the transfer happening. I don't have any permission one way or another in terms of whether the administration's okay with that or not, but I think in terms of if there is whatever the time frame is for that delay, for that transfer, we just want to make sure that it's definite and it's not squishy in terms of there's have to be another legislative action to make this transfer complete. What I've done is I've passed out some charts here that kind of shows what the energy world looks like from our perspective and under current law, what the governor's energy reorganization plan would do, specifically reflected as the bill is currently amended August 26th, and then a little indication in terms of what the Department of Energy would look like in terms of its division structure. Keep in mind, though, that with regards to this third, the only programs that are statutorily constructed are with regards to the Energy Commission itself and the commission structure, and also with regards to the Office of Energy Marketing Oversight. So this kind of gives you a good sense in terms of how we would envision the department operating, but obviously that would be up to the Energy Secretary in consultation with the governor if this bill were to move forward and be signed into law. I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody might have with regards to the specifics of the bill, specifics of what we're intending to do, anything, I guess, non-related to generation siting, the transmission lines issue, and the 9-month expedited siting process that we would put into place. I'll leave that for the Energy Commission folks.
Very good. Well, maybe now would be a good time to bring them up because I think those are some of the questions that we've got, at least I've got. And I'd begin with, trying to understand what is the reasoning behind providing the Department of Energy with siting authority over all generation facilities over 50 megawatts, or as you described them as the larger generation projects, when now they just cite thermal power plants. So maybe I think some of those questions are going to be better addressed here by Ms. Douglas.
Good afternoon, Chairman Fuentes, committee members. Thank you for having us here. We're pleased to be here. My name is Karen Douglas. I chair the California Energy Commission. I wanted to make some brief remarks about the bill, and then I also have with me Terry O'Brien, the Deputy Director of our siting program, and Bill Chamberlain, the Energy Commission's Chief Counsel, to deal with some of the specific questions that I believe you have. As the committee analysis for this bill itself points out, it has been widely agreed that if policymakers were to wipe the slate clean and create a state regulatory and oversight function, an optimal solution would not be the two conflicting and sometimes overlapping entities that exist today. California's energy agencies are all grappling with the challenges of meeting California's energy goals and environmental policies. Some of these goals and policies include greenhouse gas policies, RPS, once-through cooling implementation, the South Coast air credit limitations, SB 1368 emission reduction performance standard, local reliability, area concerns, and there's more. The infrastructure needed to achieve these policies is currently permitted by a multiplicity of agencies at the state, local, and federal level with different mandates, outlooks, and responsibilities. This fragmentation causes numerous problems and inconsistencies, and perhaps just as importantly or more importantly, it makes it very difficult for the state to provide the level of integrated statewide planning that is needed to guide our infrastructure decisions and increase transparency and predictability for stakeholders. In 1975, the Warren-Alquist Act recognized a compelling state interest in siting key energy infrastructure to ensure a reliable and economically efficient system, protect the public health and safety, and protect the environment. And this is the balancing mandate of the Energy Commission that we take very seriously today. Now more than ever, if we're to meet the challenge of transforming California's electricity system from a fossil fuel-based system to a renewable-based system, we should consolidate planning and permitting of critical transmission and generation infrastructure. I do have to point out briefly that the bill that is before you today, in our opinion, falls short on achieving these goals in at least one way, and offer the following suggestions for your consideration. First, the bill does not provide a rapid and clear transfer of transmission siting authority to the new department. And Mr. O'Brien will provide details on what we think a reasonable transition period would look like, but I'll just say generally, long timelines or ambiguous transfers will add to regulatory uncertainty, and it's a very strong state interest that we reduce such uncertainty. Second, it's important to add language that assures that need and cost assessment for transmission lines permitted by the new department would not be relitigated. Third, there's some inconsistencies in the bill as drafted in terms of which functions are assigned to the department versus the new board, and in some cases the word commission is still there. This is on one level cleanup, but in an organizational structure where you have a secretary and an independent board, it's really important to be sure that we assign the right functions to the right entity. We have other technical amendments which we either will be or have provided, and they're Mr. Maurer has them. So with that, I'd like to briefly turn this first to Mr. O'Brien to address the transmission siting issues.
I think the proposed legislation will provide multiple benefits by addressing several systemic problems with licensing power plants and transmission lines in California. First, it consolidates the currently fragmented jurisdiction of electricity infrastructure in California. California is plagued in its review of critical power plants and transmission lines by fragmented, overlapping, and often duplicative regulatory oversight, with multiple agencies having permitting authority depending on the size, technology, ownership, and location of a project. Second, the legislation continues to emphasize the need for a preeminent role in state permitting of critical electricity infrastructure. As the chairman indicated, the California Energy Commission, when it was established in 1975, there was a recognition by the legislature at that time in the key state role in permitting electricity infrastructure. And I think with the current statewide policies before us, such as reducing greenhouse gas emissions and implementing an aggressive RPS, that it's important that permitting take place predominantly at the state level and not at the local level. Third, I think the legislation more effectively integrates transmission planning and permitting. This legislation would combine transmission planning, permitting, and corridor designation within one state agency. This would more seamlessly link the permitting process with transmission policies developed in the strategic transmission investment plan that's currently prepared every 2 years by the Energy Commission. So we believe that this would be a distinct advantage to the state. In terms of concerns about transmission permitting, we believe several actions are important to ensure an orderly transition process that does not adversely impact the review of IOU transmission projects. First, I think it's important to establish a date certain for when the transition should occur, and that should be sooner as opposed to later. If you put a date too far into the future, the uncertainty is likely to adversely impact the development of projects. Second, I think you should allow an IOU to file an application with the CPUC anytime after the legislation becomes effective, but before this cutoff date, and allow a utility or a project developer to file an application with the Energy Department upon the effective date of the legislation, if that is their desire. Any project under review at the CPUC after the cutoff date should remain at the CPUC until a final decision is made, unless the applicant voluntarily withdraws the project. In terms of a transition plan, that could be developed in the first half of 2010, and one of the issues that was raised was the issue of adequate staffing. I believe that issue can be addressed in rather short order. One of the things that you would want to ensure was having adequate staff at the CPUC to continue to process the applications that were currently under review there. The Energy Department could also come back after the transition date and report to the legislature regarding any additional resources down the road that might be needed. One of the things that you have to do when looking at resource needs is meet with prospective applicants so you can get some understanding of projects that may be filed in the next 6 to 12 months. Oftentimes beyond 12 months it becomes speculative. And in addition, in terms of addressing the issues raised regarding the transition, hearings could be commenced in the early part of 2010 regarding what changes, if any, should be made to the current licensing process that exists at the Energy Commission. But it should be noted that the licensing project in existence at the Energy Commission is available to both transmission line projects and power plant projects.
So I'd like to ask Mr. Chamberlain to provide some brief information about some of the legal issues regarding the findings of need that may be required under the Constitution.
With regard to Karen's point about not relitigating the determinations of the Energy Board that a transmission project is needed and that its costs are warranted by the benefits, the Public Utilities Commission has suggested that the legislature may not constitutionally remove any rate-making authority that it has. A 2005 Legislative Council opinion is cited for that proposition, but that opinion only dealt with whether the governor could accomplish that transfer of rate-making authority in a governor's reorganization plan. A 1991 Legislative Council opinion comes to the exact opposite conclusion when the question is squarely asked whether the legislature may remove its rate-making authority and give it to another agency. While Article 12, Section 4 of the Constitution does directly give the CPUC rate-making authority over transportation companies, all other rate-making authority is given to the CPUC by the legislature. The Legislative Council reasoned in the 1991 opinion that while the legislature could not take away powers expressly granted by the Constitution, nothing in the Constitution limited the legislature's power to control those authorities that it gave the CPUC by statute. This dichotomy in the treatment of the CPUC's power comes from California history. In the 19th century, railroad companies had a relationship with the legislature that was so unacceptable to the people that they amended the Constitution to establish the Railroad Commission to regulate transportation rates. In the early 20th century, though, when the Constitution was amended to provide for regulation of other natural monopolies, this concern about the legislature's relationship with those entities had waned, and So those kinds of utilities were made subject to control by the legislature. Now, in this reorganization, the administration is not suggesting that the CPUC should be stripped of all of its rate-making authority over electric utilities. In fact, the costs of most large transmission lines are provided for in Federal Energy Regulatory Commission tariffs, and the CPUC then has to fold them into retail rates and decide how to divide it up among their various rate customers under the filed rate doctrine. But if there are any projects that would be transferred to licensing by the Energy Board within the department that would not have a federal approved transmission rate, the Energy Board's conclusion that the costs of these lines are justified by the benefits the state would enjoy, for example, from having access to renewable energy sources, should not be second-guessed by the CPUC in a litigation proceeding. In short, the CPUC will continue to allocate the costs of transmission projects of the utilities it regulates across its rate classes, but it should not be permitted in the name of rate-making authority to override the need determination of the board.
Okay, very good. It looks like that's your presentation. You know, as I'm thinking about this, rather than me start asking questions, if there isn't any objections from the members, why don't we have witnesses in support and opposition come up, and that might help narrow some of the conversation if there's significant questions. So why don't we have those members of the audience who are here in support come on up to testify, if there are any. Okay, seeing none. How about we take witnesses? Is that, sir, are you in support? Come up to the microphone, state your name, let us know who you're with, and let us know your position of support.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, my name is Ernie Flores. I'm the Executive Director of Central Valley Opportunity Center. We're one of the agencies funded by the Community Services and Development Department. And I'm here to specifically thank you for the action that you took in the amendments that will postpone the elimination of CSD and the transfer of the LIHEAP programs to and DOE programs to the Department of Energy. Specifically, we want to thank you because it relieves us of a large burden that we were facing in the possible further delay of implementing the ERA programs for the Department of Energy, Weatherization Assistance Program, and the ERA programs for community service block grants. There are many, many thousands of California residents that need their homes weatherized. They need to save money on energy costs. There are many thousands of Californians that want the jobs from these ERA programs. So we thank you specifically for that, and we look forward to working with everybody in making the transition a smooth one in the future. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Additional witnesses in support?
Hi, my name is Arlene Novotny. I'm representing the associations of energy providers. Also like to thank the chairman and the committee for listening to us on the amendments and actually pulling it through. And we're really going to be working hard to use that ERA money along with the CSBG. So yes, thank you very much.
Joan Graham from Community Resource Project here in Sacramento, also a weatherization provider, and again wanted to thank the chair and the committee for looking at the amendments and helping us to make sure that the ERA funds get out to our communities as quickly as possible. Also would like to make sure that there was an amendment in there that referred to the Department of Economic Opportunity, which I think has been clarified, but just wanted to bring that to your attention as well. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I think that was the reference there is to some ledge council language, so I didn't find any corresponding statutory references. I think it was just out of the fact that we had a lot of amendments and there was a rush job in terms of getting this thing done. So.
Great.
My name is Lynn Grogan, here on behalf of the California-Nevada Community Action Partnership, representing more than 80 community action agencies. Thank you to the chair and the committee for working with us on the amendments. We support the amendments. With the postponement, it allows us to fulfill our American Recovery and Reinvestment Act obligations. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any additional witnesses in support? That testimony really, as you all can notice, was there's a delay of 3 years before the CSD function is transferred, but it will be transferred at some point if this were to become something that was signed and become law. Let's take witnesses in opposition. I think this is where we'll have some of the conversation about concerns with the bill. Mr. Goldberg.
Lenny Goldberg on behalf of TURN. We fight pretty intensively with the PUC, so it's an unusual position here to be in the position of defending and supporting the role of the PUC, Public Utilities Commission, whether we don't necessarily agree with their policies, but we do agree with the current authority that they have, and specifically with regard to transmission. In your informational hearing, there was a lot of discussion about the number of discrete projects that have actually been cited recently, that the Commission working together with the Public Utilities Commission, working together with the CEC and working with the ISO and working cooperatively has actually cited a lot of transmission. Not only that, our view is, what are we trying to solve here? One of the problems that was a huge problem during the electricity crisis was the problem of resource adequacy. We have developed greatly sufficient adequacy of resources at the Public Utilities Commission, such that they're reaching their goal of 117%, so that there's plenty of redundancy of the system. We're filling in the transmission gaps. We don't always agree with the PUC on the costs and the impacts on rates, but the major problems of resource adequacy, of development of energy efficiency programs, which again we're critical of but have been moving ahead, of transmission siting and development and building have been taken care of. So the problem is, if we see a shift of many of these functions, and actually we would recommend the one thing that is not included in here would be a shift of energy efficiency programs from the public, and long have had this position, from the Public Utilities to the Energy Commission, but that's not being done. What we're shifting is something that has major impacts on rates, major impacts on energy planning. You can either build longer transmission lines, or you can site closer in basin. All of those affect ratepayers. All of those affect the utilities. All of those are made in a regulatory context which involves generation, which we're building a lot of or citing a lot of, and transmission, which we're citing a lot of. Those have rate implications. Those should all stay at the Public Utilities Commission. We really do have a problem with this shift. And as I said, the one thing that we have often argued is that we see a real conflict and a real cost problem with the utilities under the PUC administering energy efficiency programs. So if we said, do we have a problem that we ought to be resolving by reorganization, we would say yes, we have a problem in the way energy efficiency is run, and that should be part of a reorganization. Instead, I think we're doing the wrong things rather than the right things here.
You know, I just have to ask, because I'm a little concerned, about the philosophy of your concern with the bill as proposed. Isn't most of your work, though, on the rate-making side of things? So really the administration and application of the programs that you just mentioned, whether it's efficiency, whether it's siting, transmission lines, et cetera, so long as that function is being done by, let's say, the Department of Energy, it only concerns you when it deals with the rate-making aspect of it. So the information would flow to the PUC or the new PUC, irrespective of where those the administration of those programs were. So is yours more of a philosophical?
It is not a philosophical. It's very practical. We're engaged in every proceeding virtually every proceeding at the PUC. Well, no, not just rate making. We're certainly been fully engaged in energy efficiency. We are fully engaged in resource adequacy. We're fully engaged in the renegotiations of all the QF contracts. We've spent a huge amount of time on that. And the reason for that is all of these involve decision-making that affects rates in one form or another. And it is a broader view of efficiency of the system. As you know, Assemblyman Fuentes, our folks like Mike Florio and Matt Friedman are very broadly engaged in the design of the system. Most of that, in real terms, takes place at the PUC. There are a lot of proceedings at the Energy Commission which are important as well. But a shift to a Department of Energy would lose, we believe, a lot of the adjudicatory process, the evidentiary-based system. Now, as you know, we complain and we say we've established all the evidence and the PUC overruled our evidence, so it's not like we're on the best of terms with that process. But the fact is there are long-standing processes that appear in the case of the biggest challenges facing California, which is resource adequacy, the most green for the least green, as we call it, transmission planning, design of the system. The Public Utilities Commission is integrally involved there. And I am in, as I said, an awkward position to be defending the Public Utilities Commission since we've been so critical of them.
Right. But I think what you're doing is defending the process. But I'm just wondering if your advocacy is going to be stifled if you have to, go to a board of.
Well, I'm not even sure. We're not talking about an evidentiary process and administrative law judges and that whole process at the PUC, at the board. We're talking about, as I understand it, a single point of decision-making at the Department of Energy as a cabinet secretary who is going to change over time. Now, the PUC and the CEC changes over time, but those are six-year decisions, six-year terms that also have are staggered terms, so you have some consistency in decision making. You have a cabinet secretary who's going to be making major decisions as we see it. We don't know what a CEC evidentiary process, and we know that those exist, and they have a lot to do with siting, but with regard not just to rate making, but a lot of energy planning functions take place at the PUC. Let me just say one thing on their side, which is that often a lot of decisions get made in energy that seem to emanate from the governor's office to the PUC that are completely under the radar and not very transparent. So to the extent that you're going to start having transparent decisions where the governor and a energy secretary will be actually responsible for decisions that get made rather than discussions with commissioners that are not that we're not public to, that may be a benefit in terms of some transparency. But we don't think that's worth disrupting the process at the PUC, particularly with regard to integrated planning, which they're doing very well with the Energy Commission, with the CEC. I mean, we keep hearing these wonderful reports about how the CEC and the ISO and the PUC are working really well together. So what are we trying to address here, and why are we trying to disrupt that?
Thank you. Mr. Maurer, did you briefly want
just to clarify, with regards to the Energy Board, from Mr. Goldberg's understanding, yes, the Energy Secretary, he or she, appointed by the governor, serves at the pleasure of the governor, he or she.
Ratified by the Senate.
Confirmed by the Senate, sits as a member of the Energy Board, Energy Commission, whatever you want to call that. That full body still has the same open process, the same process that the Energy Commission currently has. All decisions are conclusive. They're based upon full participation and vote of the membership of the Energy Board. There's not one individual that does a thumbs up or thumbs down with regards to exclusive certification citing. We made those changes. We acknowledged that at the informational hearing. So in terms of Mr. Goldberg's concerns with regards to lack of any public participation or open process, transparent process, it will continue to exist.
Very good. Next witness in opposition.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I'm Danielle Osborne-Mills on behalf of the Clean Power Campaign, and our position is oppose unless amended. We support the intentions of this bill, but we feel that it fails to address a few key aspects of energy policy within the state, and these aspects are currently impeding our progress towards some key aggressive clean energy goals. Of central concern, the bill does little to improve interagency coordination. While it does call for some communication between the Department of Energy and the California Energy Board with the PUC, and various other state energy agencies in different contexts, it lacks a number of other areas. A few things that we would like to see more of in the bill are more of an effort to bring the Air Resources Board into energy policy discussions. Additionally, the Secretary of Energy would be responsible for sort of coordinating the implementation of the energy sector's climate measures. So there needs to be some collaboration between the Secretary of Energy and the Climate Action Team. Second, we suggest a model where the PUC president also reports to the governor through the Secretary of Energy. This would create a single point of contact for all energy-related matters. And lastly, there's little reference to the governor's executive order calling for a 33% RPS, and this suggested improved coordination between state agencies and the federal agencies, as well as between various state agencies involved in energy-related matters. So again, Clean Power Campaign sort of supports the intentions of the bill and the idea of an energy agency reorg, but believes this bill should go farther. Thanks.
Very good. Any additional witnesses in opposition?
Mr. Chair and members, Scott Governor on behalf of the California Wind Energy Association. We also have an opposed unless amended position on the bill. We have no position on the concept of the reorganization. There are simply two portions of this bill which we oppose. Those portions were also in Mr. Krikorian's AB 64. We oppose transferring siting of large wind projects to the state. We think it works well on a local level. We don't see any benefit from the state. There have been some issues with the Energy Commission in the past in terms of the avian guidelines. So we don't take any comfort in moving that process to the state. We know that Kern County shares that concern. The other issue has to do with the renewable energy zones. Certainly the PUC has been working on the READY process. We support that process as it pertains to transmission. But we don't think the state should be dictating which zones you should actually build a generation in. Ultimately, it's up to the developer to locate a project in an area that has reasonable interconnection and reasonable viability, and that shouldn't be up to the state because it would also impact land values. If you're just outside of the zone, your land is going to plummet in value and you're probably not going to get financing, whereas if you're in the zone, your land value will likely go up. Again, we don't think that's the role of the state. And for these reasons, we oppose it and hope that they can be resolved. Thank you.
Very good. Any additional witnesses in opposition? Seeing and hearing none. Members, let me go ahead and take any questions that you all may have for this very distinguished panel before us. Ms. Skinner. Understanding that you're going to get another cut at this bill when it goes to natural resources. Ms. Skinner?
Absolutely the case, but I thought it might be relevant for our other members to hear some of the questions that were on my mind. And thank you. I was curious about the part of the bill that removes the conflict standards for the secretary. And I wondered if that was an oversight or if it was explicit, and what the reasoning was to remove those conflict standards.
Remove the conflict standards of interest for the secretary?
Correct. So PUC appointees and PUC chair, commission appointees, or board, as it would still have the conflict of interest standards. Well, of course, your bill is silent on anything to do with PUC, but the secretary is exonerated from them, if that's correct.
I believe that was our intent. I don't remember. Our understanding was that the conflict of interest standards were the same for all five. So, I mean, obviously, if that's not the case, that was definitely an oversight. Sure.
Okay. And then the other question I wondered about was that there's a good deal of funds that the Commission now is responsible for that end up being financial awards, grants, or of other sort. There's the peer grants, there's AB 118 vehicle fees, there's renewable energy. It's a good deal of money, over, getting close to $300 million. And as far as to my knowledge, and I'm certainly not as familiar with all the different state agencies as many of my colleagues here, but to my knowledge, there's not an agency head that has a corresponding board that has and I say unilateral, and I'm not trying to be unfair here, but just from the way I read the bill, responsibility for those financial awards. And the way this bill is written, as far as I can tell, that those awards are currently, there's vote by the commission on them, and the way the bill is written, it would be the secretary who made those without the requirement of the board.
With regards to the operations of the department and with regards to determination of grants, loans, any types of awards, the workshops, the public processes, the input would still be the same. With regards to the operations of the department themselves, it would be the energy secretary would be, he or she would be in charge of the department, and that would also involve with regards to decisions with regards to grants and loans. That's correct.
Okay, so while I, possibly because I've been on the floor since, I think was it 11 this morning, I'm not, I'm not coming up with the appropriate analogy, but those agencies that have boards that also have financial awards like this, while they may have agency heads, still have the boards have a vote on the awards. So it just seemed like, given that we're doing sort of a hybrid thing here, that should still be retained.
Well, it's something we're more than happy to look into. I mean, I have no way of confirming one way or another right now in terms of if that's the case, but I'd be happy to look into that and get you that information.
Well, PUC is one example, though it's not exactly the
Right.
same as what you're.
But we're happy to look into that issue for you.
And then, let me think, what was the other? Well, those were the key things that were on my mind at the moment.
Very good. And as I mentioned a second ago, this is very much a work in progress. The next stop for this bill is going to be Ms. Skinner's committee, and it seems that she remembers her next question.
Well, there was reference by some of the first speakers, either in support or neutral on the bill, about an amendment regarding the low-income weatherization type programs. And when I looked at the bill analysis, I don't see any reference to that amendment, so I was just confused. Is it already in the bill in print, or is it one that you're recommending that we vote on today? Or
Yeah, it's in print.
No, it's in print.
Oh, okay.
Now,
okay.
there's some cleanup language that needs to happen, and we've identified it as well, but it is in print, yes.
Okay, because the bill analysis I saw, and it might not have been the committee, mentions that there's still this transfer, and so when they referred to, I was confused.
Yeah, it's a 3-year stay of sorts before it gets transferred over, largely because the
Of
concern.
the ARA funds.
Right, we don't
Okay.
want to impact the program that's running smoothly, and I think it's comment number 8, page number 2,
Okay.
where we actually mention it.
Okay.
Mr. Hoffman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And at the outset, I think I need to just express my surprise and confusion. I had thought, typically these late session, off the floor type hearings involve small little technical things, and I had come in expecting that kind of a bill. I didn't have time today because today was the first time this has been available in my office to read the 300-page bill before us. And in just trying to play catch-up, skimming through the analysis, I see this is a rather dramatic transformation of California energy policy and oversight, all of which may be very good and may be very needed, but I'm a little bit confused as to why we're doing it this way. And I wondered if you could just remind me what this bill did when we last saw it, because I do recall Mr. Valines having a bill. I don't recall it looking anything like this. And how did we get from there to here?
Yeah, this is extraordinary
Right.
session. We never heard the first bill.
We did not hear the first bill. This bill was submitted in extraordinary session. It's been, and it's not to say that those are very good points, that there's an awful lot here to it, but it's been print since May, and we've, I think, struggled with a couple of challenges in when to hear it and how to hear it. And so from high on above, we've are trying to figure out how to move this along. It's not, as you can see, a final deal on the bill. It has, though, been pretty interesting in that the author has really allowed the committee staff to do the amendments to the bill, and it's still very much in flux. But I can understand your apprehension for wanting to move a bill that is as big as this and potentially very impactful on what it is that we're doing with energy. But it's something that may be able to complement, I think, the RPS. I'm not saying that it will definitively, but it's something that a commitment was made during the last budget negotiations to move this along a little bit, and this is that little bit that it's being moved along.
If I could just add, as the author, first of all, you're correct. There's a lot of changes, but that's just a sign of what we're trying to piece together is a collaborative document that everybody makes sense to. It really is, from the governor's perspective, I can share, about trying to get this RPS standard something that will be effective and can work. He's concerned about that. Overall, the rest of it is just trying to streamline and keep everything going forward. And you're right, it's a lot of amendments at the last, sort of minute here. We are going to go to another hearing, then it'll continue into the Senate, and at the whole point, it's going to have to be agreed to and voted on. So I do get the irony, because I'm usually not in this position of moving a bill.
I'm singing your song here.
Yeah, right. But it feels good. But I would just say you're right, and I think the chair on natural resources and you and folks here have really said we've got to maybe take a better look. That is why we said, the administration said, let's work with committee staff right out of the get-go. So majority and minority staff, really driven by Mr. Fuentes' leadership, have driven a lot of the amendments we're now trying to digest and put in.
And I may have not been clear. There was an informational hearing. I forget the date of that. That was June 30th, where we took up most of the bill in chief at that point, and this is a very slimmed down version of that, but nonetheless a very big bill.
And remind me, what is the third which extraordinary session is that? Because I've lost track.
I'd have to take my shoes off to count on my toes. I don't know where. This is third extraordinary.
Purple one.
Yeah.
It's a purple session.
But is that the reform? So we're in the reform extraordinary session.
Is it the reform?
Yeah.
It is.
Okay. And we can keep that session open for a while.
That's right. So what we're trying to do is move this along in parallel to the other House deadlines, but it doesn't mean that we have to completely follow the September 11th deadline.
Well, that gives me some comfort. Tell you the truth, I'm still not sure whether I can work myself up to actually voting yay or nay on a vote of this magnitude, when frankly there are just several things, several red flags waving here for me. One of them is I look at the list of support and opposition, and there are just so many folks that we see in here on a routine basis on any major energy policy bill. They're missing. They're not in the room. They're not on here. I haven't seen any letters. I would love to know what the heck they think of this, because this is big stuff. And they're not here, and I haven't heard from them, and I do value that kind of vetting. So maybe that vetting has happened. I don't see any evidence of it. And that's a valuable part of our deliberative process, in my view. The second, I guess the red flag that waves right next to that is the fact that we are transferring a huge amount of authority and power and money to the executive branch. Maybe that's a good thing to do. But I really feel like I need a chance to think about and balance the trade-off that's inherent in that, because the firewalls that exist with these independent commissions are important. Governors come and go. Maybe I don't want to see resource planning and alignment of power grid facilities politicized. Or maybe I do want to see the streamlining benefits that I know are part of what is driving this. There are just a lot of things, I think, to think about and to balance. And quite frankly, my head's swimming. I began thinking about this 30 minutes ago. So I'm just not quite prepared, I think, to vote unless someone can prepare me in the next few minutes.
Any additional questions? Ms. Douglas, Chairman Douglas?
I was going to just briefly address your question. I think the primary change that this bill makes to the governance of the California Energy Commission is to remove it from the Resources Agency, make the chair of the commission the secretary, and maintain the independent board of term commissioners or board members. So we'll have to go back and scrub the language based on Assemblymember Skinner's question, and I made the comment in my opening remarks that there's inconsistency right now in drafting in terms of what functions appear to be given to what entities, and a lot of that will foster confusion. But my understanding of the intent of the bill is that the policymaking and adjudicatory and grant making and other authorities would still be carried out through the board. So the fundamental governance change that we're talking about is an at-will cabinet level secretary as opposed to the chairman of the board being a termed appointee.
Right, but that at-will cabinet level political appointee, there's some pros and cons to that as I look at it.
I strongly agree with that statement.
I would just share to Mr. Huffman, again, it's Senate confirmable, but we need to obviously sit down and go through this with you. Maybe we can meet off the floor this week and get the three of us to sit down with you and go through it. Yeah, I would think we'd have to. We'd be in a lot of trouble. So we're happy to do that.
So why don't you just vote for it? We can move it along.
Sure.
Mr.
Go along
Furutani,
to get along.
Of course, we
Mr.
could always
Furutani-
delay.
Mr. Furutani had a question.
Yes, Jared spoke to some of it, but the question for me was somewhat answered when you talked about it's going to be in the extraordinary session with reform, so the deadline of September 11th is not necessarily our drop-dead date, Mr. Fuentes. That helps. I'm willing to vote to get it to move along, understanding it's work in progress, as long as September 11th is not the drop-dead date. So we can have more, learn more about it. I agree with a lot what Jared has said, but that was in the hearing and stuff that you had as well, that this is big stuff, big changes. I don't like the governor calling me gutless during the week, and then I got to come and vote on something he wants, as much as I like Mike Valines. But, these kind of things.
Just think about me, sir. Just think about me.
God, that's a no.
Now you're going to run out the door.
The point, exactly. That's why you got that chair. But that's the point, Felipe. That as we move this along, it's big stuff, and I think the politics involved in it, because a large part of it is going to be politics. It's not going to just be administration, how the things fit together. There was a comment made by Mike about how this may help RPS. Now you throw RPS in there, we got another political piece in here. So a lot of moving parts. I'm willing to vote on it to move it along if that's your recommendation.
Great, thank you. Mr. Krikorian.
Well, along similar lines, I've spent about the last year thinking about governance issues and how it impacts on renewable energy and transmission and siting of renewable energy. And I've spent an hour thinking about this and hearing about what's been said about it. So let me just ask a very fundamental, simplistic question, and hopefully I can get a fundamental kind of answer. Under this reorganization plan, do you anticipate that there will be an expediting of the siting of transmission for renewable energy in California and an expediting of the siting of renewable generation in California? And if so, by how much and based on what?
I would say that there will be an improved process within the state if consolidation takes place, number one. As I said in my comments, we have a system in place today where you have multiple agencies with multiple jurisdictions, and depending on ownership, location, size, etc., that determines the review. I do think that if you have one agency doing it with civil service staff, with expertise that goes back, many years, that leads to better, more consistent results. I'll also say that currently, per the governor's executive order from November, I think there's unprecedented cooperation right now taking place between the federal agencies and the state agencies on renewable energy. And so I think that given that cooperation and given a new consolidated system, we can do a better job than we've done in the past, not only reviewing generation, but also transmission. In terms of how much can we shave off, I think down the road we can shave a lot off, but it's not going to be based upon the individual projects that come before the review of this agency if it were to be created. I think a lot of it's going to come out of the work that's currently taking place to prepare a desert renewable energy conservation plan, and following that, I believe that the agencies will turn their attention to other areas of the state. I think one of the things that you want to see eventually in place are incentives for developers to go to selected areas that have been identified as appropriate for development, identified by the appropriate government agencies, and projects in those locations can move much more quickly because we won't run into the problems that we're currently running into with projects being proposed in inappropriate locations. I think at the end of the day, 80% of it is getting siting right from the get-go.
Any additional questions, members? Okay, hearing and seeing none. If I can have the sergeant call the absent members, that would be very good. And we don't have any additional witnesses in opposition or support. If you give me 30 seconds.
What's our consultant's name? Whatever you're ready. Hey, Daryl.
Okay, Madam Secretary, call the roll.
Fuentes.
Aye.
Fuentes, aye. Duval.
Aye.
Duval, aye. Berryhill. Buchanan. Carter. Carter, aye. Fong.
Not voting.
Fuller. Furutani. Furutani, aye. Huffman.
No.
Huffman, no. Krikorian. Krikorian, aye. Skinner. Smythe. Smythe, aye. Swanson. Tarico. Valines. Valines, aye.
Okay, the bill's on call. We're gonna keep the roll open for absent members to come and cast their vote. Thank you very much.
In-state delivery, which makes no sense at all. Yeah, I've gone around with, and this is, some of this is out of existing statute, and that's there. I've pointed this out to Mark Shelley with a couple of times, so we do need to get that fixed, so it's clear that, in-state, you're making those. Yeah, yeah. Whenever it's scheduled. Yeah. So it's interesting, I've gotten the letter, I hadn't read the amendments yet, this is different than what was shown to me earlier today from Oh, really? Yeah. So it may be a timing issue. I don't know how long where if you don't put like a timestamp on the top, Tom, yeah.
Just say aye.
Yeah. Aye.
Perfect. It's out.
Thank you.
Barry Hill, aye.
Very good. That bill is out with the bare minimum, 8 votes. We're adjourned.